Nun bet, which is a little complicated, like everything. It's partly complicated because the exact language is not so clear, and I mean, there's times in the Gemara where it's not so clear. I'm not sure why in Bava Batra we've had a little bit more, maybe because there's no Rashi and it wasn't as mizukak, but there's sometimes where it's not 100% clear what the Gemara meant to say, so which confuses things. But let's see, and we'll go through it, and we of course will do our best to figure it out. So says the Gemara today, in the top of Daf Kuf Nun Bet Amid Aleph 152 in Bava Batra. We've had basically in this last parak, in this last few week of Dapim, we've been talking about this thing called a matnat shchiv mira, matana given by a person who is in their sick bed, and we added a new detail to it yesterday called a matna machmat mita, where you give something because you're dying, which is a subtype of matnat shchiv mira, where you actually either explicitly, like the case of the brother of that guy, the brother of Rav Dimi Bar Yosef, sorry, the sister of Dimi Bar Yosef, or sometimes the circumstances make it clear that a person is giving the gift only because they think they're dying, and therefore it's conditional on dying, and it can happen without a kinyan. But that's a subset, perhaps, of matnat shchiv mira. The general idea of matnat shchiv mira is that the rabbis made a takana that because a person is ill and we don't want them to be stressed about things, we want to make life easier for them, we allow them to give gifts that generally they would not be allowed to give, right? Generally, if a person wants to give something to somebody else, they can say that, but until they make a kinyan, it doesn't really have effect. And furthermore, as we've talked about before, is you can't make a gift after you die, right? A person can't say, when I die, my possession should go to so-and-so, because at the moment of death, it goes to the Yorshim, and you can't then give it away after a person's dead. You have to say it's from now, right? A shchiv mira is not like that. Shchiv mira can make a gift now, which we say is quote unquote effective now if the person dies. So therefore, it can essentially happen after death because even though you didn't say I want to give it now, it has effect now. In another detail of matnat shchiv mira is that you don't have to make a kinyan. And as we said yesterday, it's kichtuvim uchimusurim dami. It's as if it's written down and given over to the person that you want to give the gift to. And then perhaps the most important part of a matnat shchiv mira is that it's conditional. If a person gets better, then the gift goes back, right? So unlike a regular gift, you can't change your mind a week later. But a shchiv mira who is ill and gives away all their possessions to, I don't know, to the yeshiva or something, then gets recovered, all the money goes back to that person, right? So these are all details of matnat shchiv mira. Says the Gemara today, Itmar, the top word of Daf Kuf Nun Bet Amud Aleph. What if a person writes? Now the Rashbam understands that this does not mean literally writes, but the person adds to the gift of a shchiv mira a kinyan. So you don't need to make a kinyan, but this person adds a kinyan. So let's read the Gemara. Itmar. We learned in a statement, matnat shchiv mira. A person is on their sick bed. They're writing away. They're saying, I want to give all my possessions to Shmuel. Shmuel's a bad example. To Ruvain, we'll say. And kotev ba kinyan, but they add, and they either write in the shtar, I want to do it with the kinyan, or the Rashbam says it's obviously doesn't. Writing is just the normal they would do it. But for example, the same thing would be true if you did a kinyan chalipin, right? Let's say you did a kinyan in the room, and you said, I want to give this to Ruvain, and here's a kinyan that shows my seriousness of wanting to give it to Ruvain. So this is a little bit confusing because you gave a shchiv mira matana, which does not require a kinyan. And then you added a kinyan to it, which is generally done for a normal gift. So what was your intention? So, and then let's just say you didn't die, right? And you came and you're back and a week later and you're like, I want my gift back, right? So Bei Rav and Shmei de Rav Amri. So in the house of Rav, in the name of Rav, they said, Arkavei Atrei Rikhshi, that basically you gave a gift that's riding on two horses. Rikhshi are like steeds, right? So that you're basically giving a gift two ways. And we'll see in a second what that means, but essentially it means that you have the benefits, the gift receiver has the benefit of two different ways of getting a gift, meaning either as a matnat shchiv mira or as a matana of a healthy person with a kinyan. So basically you went to do both. And Shmuel said, Lo yadana ma'adumba. Shmuel said, I don't know what to do. To be honest with you, I have no idea. because it's possible that you meant it as a matnat shchimira, which means that it would work even without a kinyan. But if you came back, if you didn't die, it would go back to you. It's possible you meant it like a matnat bari, and therefore it would work even if you died, because you really just gave it away with the kinyan. However, the kinyan you might have thought the kinyan would only happen after you died, in which case you can't do a kinyan. And so basically, according to Shmuel, the receiver doesn't get the gift at all, because since we don't know what to do, and then if the man dies, it goes to his yorshim, right? If he stays alive, it goes to him. So Shmuel said, I don't know what to do. Now let's explain that in the Gemara, 4 lines from the top. Beirav Mishmei Rav Amri. In the house of Rav, in the name of Rav, they said, Arkavea Trey Rikshi, it's like you gave a gift on 2 riders, meaning Harehi Kimatnat Bari, that this is like a gift of a healthy person, a regular gift, Vaharehi Kimatnat Shchimira. And it's also like a gift of a person who's sick. Harehi Kimatnat Bari, meaning Shema Marinu Choser. It's like any other gift, which has nothing to do with your health, right? You can't say a week later, I only gave a gift because I thought the world was coming to an end because there was going to be a meteor in Alaska and it didn't happen. If you don't say a condition, there's no condition. So it's like a matnat bari and it's not choser, but it's also a reiki matnat shchivmira. It's also like a matnat shchivmira because it has another value. I forgot to add this earlier. She'im amar halva'ato leploni, halva'ato leploni. One of the benefits of a matnat shchimira is that you can give loans as a matnat shchimira. What does that mean? So we've had this case before, and it's always confusing. So I'm going to try to speak it out very clearly, right? If you have a guy named Ruvain who's owed money by someone named Shimon, so Ruvain has a star that says Shimon owes him $1,000. And Ruvain says, I want to give away the star. I want to donate the star. Right? It's almost like donating stock to charity, right? But obviously it's not charity. And Ruvain says, I want to give this star to Levi so that now Shimon will owe Levi $1,000. You cannot do that without the consent of Shimon, without him being in the presence. Because it's possible that Shimon wouldn't agree. It's not a real star. You can't give it over. However, you can do that in what we had earlier called b'ma'amad shlashtan, right? You can do it in the presence of all 3 people. So if Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi are in the room, and Ruvain says to Levi, "Here, I want to give you all the rights I have in the debt that Shimon owes me." Might be a milval pen in this case, but a debt that Shimon owes me, and Shimon's in the room, and Levi's in the room, then you can do that. However, otherwise you can't. However, with a shchiv mirah, you can. So they made a special takana by a shchiv mirah that if Ruvain is on his sick bed and Levi comes into the room, Ruvain can say to Levi, doesn't have to be there, of course, I want to give you any rights I have to collect that debt from Shimon. And because he's a shchiv mirah, that works. It wouldn't work if he was healthy. And so therefore, says Rav, this person can do both. He can be a healthy guy giving gifts, basically, which means they're irrevocable. So that if he doesn't die, if he doesn't die, the gift remains a gift. But it also has all the nuances of a matnat shchimira, for example, that you can give away loans. So that's what Rav said. Shmuel says, explaining Shmuel, Lo yadana mayadomba, I don't know what to do with this case because it's weird. Why did this person on their bed say, I want to give all my possessions to my friend Levi, and here's a kinyan to make it real, right? Shema, says Shmuel, Lo gamar lahaknuto el bishtar. Maybe the person didn't know or didn't realize the mechanisms of a shchiv mirah, and they didn't realize that when they say, I want to give everything to Levi, it goes to Levi, and they thought, I have to make a kinyan. I have to write a star or make a kinyan, right? And the way I'm giving it to Levi is through the star or the kinyan. But the problem is that since this person is sick and he's assuming I'm doing this when I die, the assumption is he's not doing it until after he dies. And ein star lachar mita. And the star can't have effect after death, right? A healthy person gives a gift, is giving it today. But a person who thinks they're dying says, I'm giving this because I think I'm dying, but then it's not going to take effect until they die. And at that point, you can't give a star after you're dead. So therefore, it would be no gift whatsoever, and it would stay with the original person. And if he died, it would go to his yorshim. So Shmuel says, I don't know what to do, and therefore, like any case of hamotzi mechaver or lav haraya, you'd have to prove it, you can't prove it, and the money would basically stay with the original owner. So that was Shmuel's opinion. Now, says the Gemara, this is a very interesting machloket because we're about to quote a very interesting case, a very famous case, where they seem to say the opposite. Says the Gemara, Rami Rav ad Rav, Ushmuel ad Shmuel. We have a contradiction of Rav's opinion on something else Rav said, and on Shmuel's opinion on something else that Shmuel said. because there was another explanation of this whole concept where Shalach Ravin Mishmeid Rabbi Avo. Ravin sent a message in the name of Rabbi Avo. And he said, Haviyadi, you should know, I guess he's speaking to the community, right? Everyone should be aware, Sheshalach Rabbi Elazar leGola Mishum Rabbeinu. That Rabbi Elazar sent a message out to the Gola, to the whole diaspora, that this is the psak name of Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu is Rav. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar sent out a message in the name of Rav saying the following. Let's say you have a shchiv mira, person who is sick, they're laying in their bed, and they say, Shamar, kitfu utnu mana leploni. You know, I want you to write and give $100 to Ruvain, umate, and then that person dies. Okay? Says Rav, or says the statement of Rav, ein kotvin v'notnin. You don't do it. Now, this seems to directly contradict Rav, right? Because this is a shchiv mira who says, shchiv mira doesn't have to say, write it down. A shchiv mira can say, give it, right? Because you just listen to a shchiv mira. But this shchiv mira said to a messenger, I want you to write it in a star and give it to that person. Now, the problem is, says Rav, that you don't do it because Shema lo gamar lahaknoto ela b'shtar. Maybe the shchiv mira thought, the way I'm going to give the gift is by writing a star, and so therefore not by just saying my words as a shchiv mira, ein star lachar mita. But you can't write a star if the man thought it's going to be effective after I die. So shchiv mira is saying, look, I'm sick. I think I'm going to die. If I die or when I die, write a star and give 100 mana to Ploni. That can't work. Because if you don't do it now, you don't do it as a shchiv mira, you can't do it after death, right? This, of course, seems to be a direct contradiction to what Rav just said. Because Rav just said that if a shchiv mira not only says, I want to give $100, but makes a kinyan, or writes a star, or does a chalipin, I added, according to the Rashbam, then it's effective. It's two gifts. It's a shchiv mira and a bari. But here Rav is saying you can't write it at all, right? So we're going to ask that question in a second. So that was a question of Rav on Rav. And in the end of this statement, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda said the name of Shmuel about the same case. Hilchata kotvim v'notzim. In fact, halacha is that you can write it and give it. So this seems to be, again, the opposite of Shmuel. Shmuel said before that if you give a gift as a shchiv mira and you add in a kinyan, we don't know what you meant, so we can't do anything. And here Shmuel is saying that if a person on his bed said to a messenger, I want you to write and give a star of $100 to so-and-so, you do it even after death, which implies that it is a valid shchiv mira, a valid matana. So ask the Gemara, Kasha de Rav, Kasha de Shmuel. Answers the Gemara, well, Rav de Rav lo Kasha. I mean, in Rav's case, there's an obvious answer, which is in one case you did it, and in one case you said to do it, right? A case we started with today, the person who's a shchiv mira actually wrote a star or gave a kinyan. So, de kanumine. You made the kinyan. You clearly indicated you wanted to give it to the person. In the other case, you said to do it, and we therefore have to assume you meant to do it after you die. And if you meant to do it after you die, you can't do a kinyan after death, and therefore it means nothing. So that's the big difference in those two cases. But what about Shmuel ad Shmuel? That also lo kasha. And the reason that's not a kasha is because although Shmuel says that if a shchiv mira says, give this thing and makes a kinyan, we then have to doubt. Did the shchiv mira realize that he's giving it originally and then the kinyan is extra, or did he think the kinyan was the main thing and therefore he's not a shchiv mira? That is true. But in this case, where Shmuel said that if a person is on their bed, in their sick bed, and they said, write something and give it after my death, it's where they were very clear that they were being, now the words are, miyape et kocho. They were strengthening his power. So there's a new concept, which we're going to elaborate on in a minute, so I'm not going to explain it in detail, called yapeh et kocho, where a person understands what they're doing, they understand they're giving a gift of a shchiv mira, but they make clear that they want to enhance the gift, meaning they want to make it even stronger. And that's what was happening there. The person was saying, I know as a shchiv mira, I can give a gift of 100 mana to my friend right now. And I want to do that. And I want to make it even stronger by writing a star that will say that I wanted to do that. So we're going to see on Amud Bet what it means, how you know that a person's being miyapet kocho. But that's what Shmuel says. Now, there's a very interesting case. We are 6 lines from the bottom, 7 lines, last word on the line. Yatev Rav Nachman.
Isn't he giving by saying that, or by this particular construct that we're using,
Yeah.
isn't he essentially giving that person the legal authority to assume the gift. In modern Hebrew, the word for ipui koach means power of attorney.
Right. So
So
it's
this
the same.
seems to me like it's a power of attorney.
Once again,
That's the word we use for in the modern
it's
Hebrew
not a very different concept there. It means
for
the same
power of attorney.
idea,
We
but
say
it's not what it means here.
ipui koach means power of attorney.
Right, but it's not literally the words literally mean you have a strong yafa means you're stronger, koach, or you have more power. So that's literally what it means. But yes, it comes from the same concept where basically instead of saying to someone, I have intention to do it, I actually allow you to do it. So power of attorney, right? You have the actual power to do it. So we'll see on Amabet what the language is, why Shmuel said this, but it's basically where you make very clear that you're not equivocating about, which is what Shmuel was worried about in the beginning of today. Am I giving it to you as a matnat shchiv mira? Am I giving it to you as a matnat bari? I'm not really sure. Am I changing my mind? In the case of yipoy koach, you are very clear that you want to give it as a shchiv mira and you want to enhance the power of that. So you don't want to, change it. Anyways, we'll get to that in a few minutes. But let's get to this case. Yatev Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, 6 lines from the bottom. So you got to remember all the players in this case. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is sitting in the Beit Midrash. Okay, let's put him in the third row. And he's sitting achrei de Rava. He's sitting behind Rava. So Rava is sitting in the second row in front of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. And Yativ Rava kamed Rav Nachman. Right in the front of the Beit Midrash sits the rabbi, which is Rav Nachman in this case. So Rav Nachman is the senior Rav. Rava is sitting in front of him, chatting with him, and Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is behind them, and he's obviously a junior person. He's just watching the conversation. And so he hears that Kabo Mine, Rava, asked Rav Nachman the following question. Mi Amar Shmuel Shema Gamar Lakna Toel B'Shtar Vein Shtar Lachar Mita. Did Shmuel say that in the first case of today, right, where a person is a Shchiv Mira, and they say, I want a right in a star. I want to give all my money to Ruvain, right? We're not sure what the halacha is because they could have just said, I want to give all my money to Reuven. The fact that they actually made a kinyan or wrote a star about it, we're not sure if maybe, this is Shmuel's words, right? Or the Gemara's words in Shmuel, Shema lo gamar l'hakner to'el b'shtar. Maybe you didn't plan to give it to him as a shchiv mirah, but as a star, and ein star lachar mitah. If you're relying on the star, it's ineffective because the star can't take effect after you die. So that's what Shmuel said. We don't know what the person means. So asked Rava to Rav Nachman, did Shmuel really say that? What about the following statement that we know in the name of Shmuel? Ha'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda, remember, was a big primary student of Rav and Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel the following thing: A shchiv mira shekatav kol nechasav la'achirim. Right? Let's say a shchiv mira writes all of his possessions to somebody, right? The regular shchiv mira, but he writes it down in a star. Says Shmuel, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, not only if you wrote it in the star, but even if you made a kinyan to show that I really want it to happen, it's still a gift of a shchiv mirah because amad choser. If the guy gets up, meaning he heals from his illness, the gift goes back. So why? Because turn the page, continued Shmuel or continued Yehuda the name of Shmuel, be a dua, because you know, shelo haya kinyan ela machmat mita, that the only reason he was making the kinyan is because he thought he was going to die, right? So he only said, I'm giving you this gift, I'm writing it down, I make a kinyan to make it official, but it's unspoken that he's assuming he's going to die because he's lying on his bed. And if he therefore gets healthy, even though you made a kinyan, even though you wrote a star, it's not considered a gift. So now this seems to contradict what Shmuel said in the beginning of today, where Shmuel said, we're not sure. Maybe by writing the star, you changed your mind. Here, Shmuel says, there's no doubt you didn't change your mind. You're sick. You're giving it because you're sick. Nothing changes that. So this was Rava's question to Rav Nachman.
How
So
is that any different from the case in the previous daf where we have a person did make a kinyan, it's like a woman made and she did make a kinyan, and then we say mitzaveh machmat mita that it returns back to her after if she gets better.
the difference in that case is that in that case, remember, we had to interrogate what did she say? And she said, remember, oh, I'm dying and therefore I'm giving this. And so she was literally, we used her words, right? That she said, I'm dying and therefore I'm doing this. Here, Shmuel is taking it a step further. This person didn't say, I'm doing this because I'm dying. It's understood from the context. And Shmuel is saying that anytime you have this context of a shchiv mirah, basically, even if you make a kinyan like that woman did yesterday, even if you give a star, it goes back if you get healthy. So that's true. So Shmuel is basically saying everything is considered to be a shchiv mira. The reason it's a question that Rav is asking Rav Nachman is that earlier today we weren't sure, right? Shmuel said if a person's a shchiv mira and they make a gift and then they write a shtar about the gift, we don't know if they changed their mind or they didn't change their mind. Maybe they're writing a shtar to say I want to give it as a real gift, but Shmuel here is saying there's no doubt they didn't change their mind, right? So that's the question that Rava asked Rav
It's
Nachman.
really not that different than the lady.
Except for the lady said something. That's the difference.
Oh, he
But
didn't say anything here?
right, he didn't say anything. That's
This,
this
this person didn't say anything.
right. Remember the thing
But
about the
he's
lady.
saying, right, he's saying, write the, or he just wrote it without saying
No,
something.
he's saying write it. But remember the lady, she said, because I'm dying. Remember the whole thing with the lady was that they asked the witnesses, what did she say at the time that she gave it? And she said, if you recall the language yesterday was, I'll find it. She said, Vai de kamita hach itita. Whoa, that this woman is dying, right? So therefore, saying it made it very clear that she was a mitzaveh machmat mita. But here, no one said anything of that nature. So that was the question. We're at the second line that Rava asked Rav Nachman.
So
Now
he
Rav
still holds that it
Nachman,
goes back then. Is that it here?
here it goes back, correct. There,
So then Shmuel has a decision. He made his decision here. He's saying that it
that's
does.
the question. That's the question Rava asked Rav Nachman, because earlier today Shmuel said, I don't know what to do. And here Shmuel seems to say, I have no doubt. It goes back and it's a regular matnat shchiv mira. So that was the question that Rava asked Rav Nachman. And Rav Nachman did not answer with words. Rav Nachman, the second line is, Ach vilei biyade. He showed him with his hands. So it's not clear exactly what that means, but presumably the simple usually means is that he just dismissed him. He said, it's not a question. Don't worry about that. Okay. And Rava was happy with that. Rava didn't say anything. The ishtik. He was quiet. Rava didn't say, what do you mean? Rava understood him. So remember, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is watching this all happen from the back of the room. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak doesn't understand what's going on. So when the session is over, when they get up for lunch, when they get up and the Beit Midrash is the formal discussion is over, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak and Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak comes over to his Rava and says, my achvailach. What did he message you? Meaning, what was the answer that Rav Nachman gave you that answered your question? I still don't understand it. So Amar Le, so Rava said back then that Rav Nachman made it clear to me that what we're talking about in this case of Shmuel is miyapeh et kocho. It's where instead, remember, Shmuel's case earlier today was where a person basically did two contradictory things. He gave a matnat shchiv mira and he wrote a shtar, right? And the question is, which one is his main intention? Is it the shchiv mira? Is it the shtar? Here we have a case where Shmuel says, even though you gave a matnat shchiv mira and you wrote a shtar and you made a kinyan, it's considered to be a full matnat shchiv mira. So the question was, why aren't we uncertain whether you changed your mind? And the answer that Rav Nachman gave to Rava, which he now explained to his student, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, is that in this case, in the last case of Shmuel, it's where it's clear that you didn't change your mind. It's where you were strengthening miyapet kocho. You were strengthening the gift of the Shchiv Meirah. Now ask the Gemara finally, today, 4 lines on the top. Hechi dami miyapet kocho. What does that mean? Your miyapet kocho. What does that literally look like? How do you know that the person is saying it to strengthen the gift of the Shchiv Meirah? Says Rav Chisda, it's where you write in the shtar, or you even say, but let's say you write in the shtar, the kinena mine, that you should make a kinyan from me, mosif al matanta da, which adds to the gift I already gave you. So basically, you don't say, you're very clear that the kinyan is not replacing the gift. The kinyan adds to the gift. And so by saying that, you're very clear that you want the gift to be a matnat shchiv mira and to have all the rules of a matnat shchiv mira, which means that it goes back if you stay alive, and otherwise it doesn't go back, and you can give shtarot, you can do all the halvaot, for a shchiv mira, but you're adding to it by saying, and I want to add a kinyan on top of it. So by saying the words kinyana minei mosif, you're saying, I don't want to replace it, which was Shmuel's question earlier today. It's very clear here that you want to add something on top of it. And so that is the case of Shmuel. And when you write that language, there's no doubt that you want the matnat shchiv mira, and you're adding something to it to make it even more effective. Now, pshita, says in our 7 lines on the top, it's obvious to us that if you are katav lazeh, the katav lazeh, right? Regular case of shchiv meira, and again, the Rashbam always, and says here too, the word katav is not literal. Katav means you wrote. The Rashbam says the same thing would be true if you said it, right? Because by shchiv meira, saying it is like writing it, right? Tivei shchiv meira, the words of a shchiv meira are like they are written. So katav here does not literally mean written. It could mean that, but it doesn't have to mean that. So let's say a person is a shchiv meira, and we had this case yesterday, and they write a shtar, or they say, I want to give everything to Ruvain. And then an hour later, they say, I want to give everything to Shimon, right? So says the Gemara, Katav lezev, Katav lezeh. I know that's the exact case of Chiyata Rav Dimi, where Rav Dimi said, Amar, Daitiki mevatel Daitiki. A Daitiki, which is a funny statement for, I don't know, there's no translation for Daitiki, but it's basically the statement of a Shchiv Mirah. It's a nutrikon of dat to hey koi. This thing should be in this situation, right? It cancels another Daitiki, meaning as we had yesterday, Shchimra can change their mind. And it doesn't matter whether they write it down or don't write it down. They are writing it down is the same thing as saying it, and it's treating it like a shchimira, and you can withdraw and give it to somebody else as long as you're still alive. Okay, but that's if you just say it or just write it like a regular shchimira. But
Well,
what
what's Lamed Shin? The Rashbam, I see that twice, and don't remember what that Lamed Shin is. Shchiv Mirah, Lamed Shin, Al
Loshna,
Peh.
Loshna
Oh,
means
Loshna, okay.
there's no difference whether
Yeah,
you
okay, I know what
that
that.
you do it b'shtar.
Right.
So that's what he's saying. It's not literal. It's a thing. Anyways, says the Gemara, if you just say or write, I want to give this to A, and then you later say I want to write to give it to B, write or say I want to give it to B. The second one cancels the first one. But the question is, what if you are katav v'zika lezeh? What if you write it down and make it kinyan? You say, I want write this and give it to Ruvain, and then you write and say, make it kinyan. I want to give it to Shimon. The question then is, do you view that as a regular gift? In which case, if you give away your car to Ruvain, you can't then give your car away to Shimon, right? Or do you view it as a shchiv mirah, which is as long as you're not dead, you can always change your mind. So what do you say in that case? So says the Gemara, it's the exact same machloket of Rav and Shmuel that we started off today with. Because basically, you did both mechanisms. You are a shchiv mirah, you're acting like a shchiv mirah, but you also wrote something that's like a regular kinyan. If you're a shchiv mirah, you can change it from gift to A to B. If you're a regular person, you can't. And so here we don't know exactly what to do. So says the Gemara, what happens? Rav says, well, Rishon Kana, the first one gets it, like a regular gift. Ushmul Amar Sheni Kana, the second one gets it. Rav Amar Rishon Kana, because as Rav said earlier today, Harehi Kimat Nat Bari. You treat this like the gift of a healthy person because he made a kinyan and he made a zichut. And therefore, you gave it away to Ruvain, and you can't then give it away to Shimon. Ushmol says Sheni Kana. Shmuel says the second one is Koneh because Harehi Kimat Nat Shchivmira. Because this is like a Matnat Shchivmira, because we don't know what your intention was. And so therefore it goes to the second one and not to the first one. Ask
But
the
we learned yet in the daf, the previous daf, that this woman wanted to give to one son. The second said, "Listen, you don't. He's a Talmud Chacham, but I'm not. You're giving him it." So she changed her mind and gave it to the second one.
Right. So that's the first thing we just said 3 lines ago. That by a regular case of shchiv mirah, a daitiki mevatel daitiki. Daitiki means if you're relying on the words or the writing of the shchiv mirah, the next words can cancel the first words. But here you added something because you wrote a shtar and you made a kinyan, right? So if you do those two things, then the question is, can you change it once you've done them? And Rav says you can't. Shmuel says you can. Ask the Gemara. That's a really nice machloket Rav and Shmuel, but it's the exact same machloket we started the daf with today, right? We already had this argument today, so why are you having it again? Says the Gemara, no. There's something we're adding here. Right here. Sorry, that's the question. The case we started with today, which was these words of a madnat shchiv mirah, where you wrote a kinyan. Remember, those are the first words of today's daf, where Rav said, well, it's a real kinyan, and therefore it's a matnat bari, it's a regular gift. And so if you gave it to one person, you can't give it to a second person. And Shmuel said, I don't know what to do, and you don't treat it like a gift, and therefore it goes to the last person. So it's tzrichas. That's why, well, you need to have it again. Because itmar b'ha, if Rav had only, if we'd only had the machlokin in the first case that we had today, right, I would have said, Dehakam Rav, right? Rav only says in that case that it's considered to be a matnat bari because mishum dekanu mine, because they actually made a kinyan. It was actually an act of a kinyan. Ava baha, but in this case, right? where basically what you did was not a kinyan, but it was a zika. Zika means where you're mizakeh, you give rights of something to somebody else, you make a kinyan for them, basically. Beha de lo kanumine. In this case, where you didn't actually, the person was not there to make a kinyan. I might think imamodele the shmul, that he admits to shmul that this might be a matnat shchiv mira, might be a matnat bare. We don't know. V'yitmar b'ha, I would have said b'ha kamer shmul. I would say only in this case does Shmuel say that because it's written down and zochet in the shtar, but not physically make a kinyan. That's where Shmuel says we don't know. Alpha b'hach imamodele the rav tzricha. Therefore, you need both things, and that is. Well, let's do a few more lines, and then we're going to do a summary. I'll give you a summary.
Where's the Gemara says Zika? Where's that? I missed that word. A Zika.
That was the case here. Shmuel.
Well, but where's the word in the Gemara? Where does it use the words Zika?
If you go up, I don't know, if you go up like 8 lines, those are the words. Katav v'zika lezeh.
Okay,
Katav
I did
zika
miss
lezeh.
it.
Okay, now the Rishbam is a beautiful summary, which we'll get to by the end of today's daf. So let's get there. But Besura matnu haki. Now in Surah, this is the way they taught it. Right? Remember, Surah was a big yeshiva in Bavel. But in Pumbedita, when they talked about this huge, huge machloka between Rav and Shmuel about how to understand a gift of a shchiv mirah who says conflicting things. So he writes it and he says make a kinyan and he's zocha. What do you view it as? In Pumbedita, they said, I remember Yirmiyah bar Abba, that Shochule mi bei Rav Shmuel, that in Pumbedita, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said, 3 lines from the bottom, that they sent from Beirav the question to Shmuel, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us our master, teach us Shmuel. And Rav was probably dead at this point, right? So Beirav is after Rav was no longer alive. Shmuel took over basically, and people started questioning Shmuel about things. And they said to him, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us, what about a shchiv mirah? Shekatav kol nechasav la'achirim. This is a regular shchiv mirah, right? They write, I want to give everything I have to Ruvain, but kanu miyado. Then they make a kinyan. So what about in that case, right? What if you make an actual kinyan to that person? So mahu. Now, what's the halacha? Let's say the shchiv mirah doesn't die, right? He comes back, he gets recovered. He goes to the guy and says, I gave you all my money, but I really need it back because I'm healthy again. Says, and remember, shchiv mirah usually would go back. Shalach lahu, so Shmuel sent back the message which said, Ein achar kinyan klum. That you know what? Once you make a kinyan, nothing it can stop that. So the fact that you made the kinyan means that it's not a gift of a shchiv mirah, it's a gift of a bari, and everything goes back. Now, savor mina, let's read the last words and we'll clarify this all. Savor mina, they thought, top word of Daf Kufn and Gimel Bet Aleph, the people of Rav, Beirav, thought, Hani mili la'acher. That what it means is that if let's say you give all of your stuff to Ruvain and you make a kinyan, and then you change your mind. Shmuel just said, "Ein achar kinyan klum," right? You can't do anything after kinyan, which means you can't give it to somebody else. That's what they thought. But they thought for himself, he can always say, "I want it for myself." Hani mili la'acher, aval la'atzmo lo. But by himself, he can keep his own thing. And Amar Rav Chisda, but Rav Chisda clarified and said, "Ki ata Rafuna mikufri." When Rafuna came, Pirsha, he explained the third line, "Bein la'atzmo, bein la'acherim." Whether you do it for yourself or you do it for somebody else, you no longer have any rights to get this thing back. Once you made a kinyan, you no longer can get it back. I'm going to read 2 more lines and I'm going to summarize. Ahu dekanu mine, there was a case of a person who was a shriv mirah, right, who was lying on his bed. Reuven came in. He said, Reuven, I want you to have everything that I own. Here's a kinyan to solidify this. And then he got better. Ata the Kamed Rafuna, he came to Rafuna and said, I want to get my money back. And Amar, Rafuna said to him, Ma'i avadacha, what can I do for you? Delo aknit kidamakni inchi. You didn't make a kinyan the way normal people make a kinyan. You're not supposed to do that. If you're a shchiv mirah, you're not supposed to make a kinyan. Shchiv mirah just says things or writes things down. The fact that you made the kinyan makes it a gift right now, and there's nothing I can do to reverse that. So you basically messed up. And so there's a beautiful Rashbam here. If you have the time and want to do it. It starts from the first of the wide lines of Kuftan Gimel Amud Aleph, and it goes to the end of the narrow lines. So the whole row, basically, where the Rashbam summarizes the whole Gemara and
Where
basically
does it
says,
begin? What is it?
Amar Lu Rav Chisda.
Kedemakani inche?
Well, sorry, yeah, I guess if you go down, yeah, if you go down like 8 lines, Kedemakni Inshi. So the Rashbam basically goes through here, if you read through the Rashbam, that there are 4 categories according to Shmuel, okay, of what a shchiv mira means. The first category, he says, is a regular shchiv mira, right, where you don't leave anything behind, right, and this is the normal way to do a shchiv mira. You say, person's on their bed, a sick bed. They say, I want to give all my possessions to Ruvain or Ruvain, Shimon, Levi. It doesn't matter who you give it to. I'm giving away everything. Leave nothing behind. You don't write a star. You don't make a kinyan. You just say it. And in those cases, then, that's not one of his 4 cases. That's an obvious case. That's a shchiv mira. This case we started with today is where a person says they're like a shchiv mira, right? And they write it into a star, right? They write it into a star, but they don't make any extra kinyan to that star. So they write it in a star, which is unnecessary, but they're not make a kinyan or a zika in that star. That's the case that Shmuel started with today, right? Where Shmuel said, I don't know what the person meant. Either they meant to do a shmat shchiv mira, which is normal, or they meant to do it through the star. If they meant to do it through the star, it doesn't work because you can't do a star after you die, right? And so if they meant to do it through the star, then he gets nothing, and therefore we don't know, and he gets nothing. So that was the first case of today. The second case of today was where it was very
He gets nothing, but but this person get it back?
yeah, because it's motzmei chaver levarai, so it stays with the person who has it, right? And if he dies, it goes to his yorshim. And the second case of today was where it was very clear that when you wrote this, that you wrote the star, you weren't writing the star as a form of kinyan. You were writing the star to enhance the value. B'miyapek kocho. You were trying to saying, in addition to the gift I gave you, I want to make it even stronger. In that case, the star doesn't hurt in any way, right? Because the star is clearly meant just to make things better. And that's a regular matnat shchiv mira. And if you die, it goes back to the person who was sick. I'm sorry. If you die, it goes back to the person if you die, it goes to the recipient. If you don't die, it goes back to the person who gave it, right? That's the second case. The third case where you basically wrote a star and you were mizakeh the star. That was the case we had right on Amabet. And you said, I want to give this star to you as a proof of what we've done. In that case, the Shmuel holds that you're allowed to change your mind, right? Because the star itself is just a proof of the matnat shchiv mira, but it remains a matnat shchiv mira. And so even though you wrote a star and you said, I want to give the star as proof of it, the star is just proof of the matnat shchiv mira. And but it is a real gift. It doesn't ruin the matnat shchiv mira, but it allows you to change your mind. So if you then write a second star to somebody else, that's fine. That goes to the second person. Because like any shchiv mira, you're allowed to change your mind any point along the way. But the fourth case, which is the last one, is where you are katav vizika vihikne, right? There, you wrote the star, you were mizakeh, you gave it to him for the purpose of getting this, and you made a kinyan. And there, that's where Shmuel says, at least according to Pumbedita, ein la'achar kinyan klum, that once you make that, you're basically saying, I am giving you this gift right now at this moment, not like a matnat shchiv mira, and not like a matnat bari after death, which you can't do. I'm giving it to you right now. And once you do that, you do all 3 of those steps. You write it, you're mezakeh, and you make a kinyan. Then you can't go back. You can't change your mind. And if you don't die, you still lose all your money. So that is a case where you should not write that unless you want to lose all your money. And there's no way to help that person. So I encourage you to read that Rashbam again. He goes through all 4 of these cases very clearly. And that's basically a summary of Shmuel's halachot. Rav disagrees with some of them, but that's a summary.
So this is according to Shmuel then, right? Not
This is
Rav.
according to Shmuel, and the Rashbam, if you read the Rashbam, will point out that the reason he likes to say Shmuel is that we generally paskin like Shmuel when it comes to questions of dinim.
So
So
why did the people that in this last case they came to Shmuel because Rav wasn't alive anymore?
yeah, I mean, usually Rav died before Shmuel, and usually when it talks about Bei Rav, it means the students of Rav who then had to come to Shmuel to ask their questions. So they inquired of Shmuel. Remember, if you recall, we mentioned it today, Rav Yehuda was a very famous student of Yehuda Rav, is quoted all the time. But then when Rav died, Rav Yehuda went to Shmuel and he became a student of Rav Yehuda Shmuel, basically. So that was the ages. I don't know how many years existed between the two of them, but that's usually
But
how.
in the beginning, it talked about Bay Rav versus Shmuel, right? It didn't say Rav and Shmuel, did it? I don't
In the
remember.
beginning, it said Beirav Mishmei Rav, if you remember.
Right. So then,
No, but
so
they were quoting Rav. No, but that's a quote of Rav. I mean, you don't quote Rav unless you know Rav said it, right?
so then,
Okay.
how does it seems that we're changing now? Initially, that's what I thought. It says Bay Rav. So Bay Rav, the machloket was between Bay Rav and Shmuel. But near the end of the daf, we're saying it really doesn't matter what Bay Rav says. Bay Rav goes to Shmuel anyway.
Well, I mean, they asked the question of Shmuel. They didn't have a Rebbe anymore. They had to ask someone. I don't know.
So at one time, they were quoting him, using him, but now they don't want to. They want to just go to Shmuel. Is that it?
Well, they don't know. You can't quote. You can't make up quotes, right? So Beirav had quotes from
Oh,
their.
so they had a quote from him in the
They had
past.
an initial quote, but they asked Shmuel about a different case. The case they asked Shmuel
Okay,
about
so
was
that's it.
different.
So there was no, they didn't have a
Correct.
thing from Rob anymore.
Okay. Shavua Tov, everyone. It's great to learn. We'll learn again later in the week. Have a wonderful week.